Brandon Chase, known to the crypto world as Big Balls, was a teenage genius who turned a joke coin into a multi-million-dollar empire until one stormy night in Washington, D.C., when he was found beaten, bleeding, and silent outside his home. What began as a rise to digital fame spiraled into a chilling tale of betrayal, stolen code, and a mysterious disappearance that still haunts the darkest corners of the internet. Brandon Chase was not your average teenager. At just 19, he was already a millionaire, a tech genius, and a legend in the underground crypto world. Known by his flashy online alias, Big Balls, Brandon wasn't called that just for show. He earned the name by doing what few dared to even consider. When he was 17, he took his entire college savings, every last cent of a $10,000 fund his parents had put aside, and dumped it all into Doge, a meme coin everyone thought was a joke. But Brandon had been watching trends, scanning message boards, decoding human behavior on social media. He had developed a crude algorithm that tracked influencer sentiment and predicted crypto spikes before they went viral. When Doge skyrocketed months later, Brandon's bet turned into millions, and he became an instant icon in niche online forums. But he didn't stop there. Instead of buying luxury cars or flaunting his wealth, Brandon quietly vanished from the spotlight. He moved to Washington, D.C. and rented a modest brick townhouse on a quiet street. Most neighbors assumed he was just another quiet college kid or junior developer. No one knew that inside that house, Brandon was building something far more powerful than a meme-based investment. His early bot had evolved into a full-blown AI trading system capable of analyzing thousands of digital signals in real time. The system, codenamed Sledge, was able to predict market behavior minutes ahead of time with alarming accuracy. Brandon began licensing it privately to a few elite clients, crypto whales, shady venture firms, and digital gamblers who didn't care about legality. His network was secretive, his communications encrypted, and his identity guarded like a state secret. Despite his wealth, Brandon lived like a minimalist. He didn't party, he didn't travel, he rarely left home, he became a ghost. The only sign of life were occasional food deliveries and the glow of monitors from his basement late into the night. Some online claimed he had gone full hermit. Others thought he had vanished completely. But behind that silence, Brandon was working, watching, evolving the bot that made him rich and, in the process, making powerful enemies. Unknown to him, people were watching too. Someone else knew what Sledge could do. Someone who believed that Brandon didn't create the AI alone. Someone who believed they were owed a piece of the fortune. As Brandon worked alone behind encrypted firewalls and silent servers, a plan was unfolding on the other side of the digital mirror, one that would bring real danger to his doorstep. The quiet neighborhood, the locked townhouse, the invisible life, it all gave him a false sense of security. What Brandon didn't know was that privacy doesn't always protect you. Sometimes, it isolates you just enough for someone to strike without warning. And on one rainy night in D.C., that's exactly what happened. The storm rolled over Washington, D.C. with quiet menace. Rain fell in steady sheets, masking the soft crunch of footsteps on wet pavement. In Brandon Chase's quiet neighborhood, most homes were dark by midnight. His townhouse, like always, had a faint glow in the basement window, his only sign of life. The next morning, that calm routine shattered. At 6:43 a.m., a jogger passing by noticed Brandon slumped on the front steps of his home. His face was bruised and swollen, one arm twisted unnaturally, blood smeared across his hoodie and dripping down onto the concrete. His phone lay shattered beside him, screen still faintly flickering in the rain. Emergency services were called immediately. He was still breathing, but barely conscious. Neighbors crowded around in confusion. There had never been any trouble on this block, and few people even knew who Brandon was. When paramedics arrived, they noted the strange absence of defensive wounds. It didn't look like he had fought back. It looked like someone had ambushed him with precision, leaving just enough damage to send a message. He was rushed to the hospital with a broken wrist, a cracked orbital bone, and minor internal bleeding. Doctors later confirmed he had a concussion and may have been unconscious for hours. Police arrived at the townhouse shortly after and found something that made the case far more complicated. Despite the physical assault, the interior of Brandon's home showed no signs of robbery. His living room was untouched. The expensive tech equipment upstairs was still in place. A leather bag filled with cash, nearly $30,000, sat on a shelf near the door. Nothing obvious had been taken. No drawers ransacked, no valuables missing. It wasn't a burglary, but there was something off. A trail of muddy boot prints led from the back door into the kitchen and down into the basement. The prints stopped in front of a solid steel door that had been heavily reinforced, installed by Brandon himself a year earlier. It had no handle, just a keypad and a biometric scanner. Investigators were puzzled. Why would a 19-year-old living alone need this level of security on a basement room? More troubling was the fact that the alarm system had been shut off manually from the control panel near the stairs. There was no forced entry, no signs of hacking from the outside. Whoever did this had either known the access code or had watched Brandon long enough to learn it. The front and rear locks showed no signs of tampering. While Brandon lay unconscious in the hospital, the police were left with more questions than answers. If this was an attempted robbery, it was the strangest they'd ever seen. If it wasn't, then what was the real motive? As rain continued to fall outside, a darker truth began to form in the minds of investigators. Someone had come not to steal from Brandon, but to target him directly. And whatever they were after wasn't money. It was something much more valuable. Once the search warrant was secured, police returned to Brandon Chase's townhouse with a team of digital forensic experts. The steel-reinforced basement door, still locked when they arrived, was finally opened with Brandon's biometric data, supplied under court order while he remained sedated in the hospital. Behind that door, officers found a space that looked more like a miniature data center than a basement. Server racks hummed softly against the concrete walls. 4 custom-built machines ran in a continuous loop, their monitors glowing with streams of code and real-time crypto market charts. Cables stretched in tight bundles across the floor, and a dry erase board stood in the corner, filled with handwritten formulas and time-stamped notes. At the center of the room was a single chair positioned before a monitor, surrounded by energy drink cans and discarded paper notes. This was the core of Brandon's empire. The investigators also found a tall gray steel cabinet bolted to the floor and walls. It required both a digital key and biometric verification to open, a level of security far beyond what any casual coder would need. When finally accessed, the cabinet revealed hard drives stored in anti-static bags, several encrypted USBs, a second, disconnected laptop, and a slim black notebook filled with handwritten passphrases and obscure mathematical equations. One of the drives had a sticker labeled Sledge Core. It was quickly sent off to a secure lab for analysis. Digital forensics began pulling security logs from the home's internal system. What they uncovered changed the course of the investigation. 2 nights before the attack, someone had remotely accessed Brandon S. Wi-Fi and had started downloading massive files during the early morning hours. But the access point wasn't from an outside hacker thousands of miles away. It was local. The attacker had to be within the immediate network range, likely less than 100 feet from the house. As they traced logs and examined timestamps, detectives found something even more chilling. The download had been paused at exactly 2:18 a.m. on the night of the attack, within minutes of when Brandon was likely assaulted. Whatever files were being taken, the job wasn't finished. Across the street, a neighbor's doorbell camera provided the first visual clue. At 2:13 a.m., a hooded figure was captured entering Brandon's backyard through a side alley. The person carried no flashlight, left no fingerprints, and avoided all the home's visible cameras. Whoever it was, they knew the layout of the house, knew where the cameras were, and knew how to stay hidden. The way the figure moved, calm, rehearsed, confident, stood out. This was not a random mugger or opportunistic thief. Detectives now suspected someone close to Brandon had orchestrated the attack, someone with inside knowledge. The attempt to access the basement, the bypassed alarm system, the localized Wi-Fi breach, all pointed to a planned, targeted mission. And whatever was in Sledge, the AI program stored on those drives, had been worth not just stealing, but risking prison, or even murder. Brandon had created something powerful, but in doing so, he had attracted the wrong kind of attention. The investigation took a sharp turn when a Reddit post surfaced just 5 days after the attack. On a cryptocurrency subforum known for underground tips and market leaks, an anonymous user going by the name TrueCode7 uploaded screenshots of what appeared to be Brandon's proprietary trading interface. The design matched descriptions found in his notes. The layout, the algorithm structure, it all pointed to one conclusion. This was a partial leak of the Sledge system. Though the code was obfuscated, experts confirmed it wasn't a clone or copycat. It was authentic and traced directly to the signature patterns identified in Brandon's own software. The user claimed the files were obtained legally, but the timestamps aligned precisely with the moment Brandon was attacked. Authorities quickly worked to trace the IP address behind the Reddit account. While the original post was deleted within hours, cached logs and DNS tracking led investigators to a name that hadn't a T appeared in Brandon's world for almost 2 years. Marcus Givens. Marcus was once Brandon's closest collaborator. The two had met at a national tech competition in 2022, where they jointly presented an early version of a sentiment-tracking crypto bot. They didn't win, but they connected. They shared ideas, emailed back and forth, even briefly worked on a side project under a shared GitHub account. But that relationship collapsed after Brandon stopped responding. According to digital history, he had locked Marcus out of the repository and deleted their shared files months before Sledge appeared in Brandon's portfolio. It was unclear what happened between them, but Marcus had gone silent online afterward. His social media accounts were dormant. His name had disappeared from forums. Most assumed he'd moved on. But Marcus hadn't disappeared. He had gone dark, and he had been watching. When investigators raided Marcus's small apartment just 2 blocks from Brandon's townhouse, they found 2 laptops, multiple burner phones, and an entire corkboard filled with printed screenshots, maps, and Wi-Fi signal charts of Brandon's neighborhood. Marcus had meticulously tracked Brandon's online presence, monitoring crypto wallets, forum posts, and blockchain activity. On one of the laptops was a complete folder named Reclaim, which included scripts designed to extract files from Brandon's servers, notes on alarm system vulnerabilities, and a list of entry points around the property. Most chilling of all was a hand-drawn floor plan of Brandon's house. When arrested, Marcus told investigators he hadn't intended to hurt Brandon, just to get back what was rightfully his. He claimed that Brandon had stolen the core AI idea they developed together and had made millions while erasing Marcus from the narrative. In Marcus's mind, he was not a criminal. He was a victim taking back what he deserved. But the assault, the theft, the intrusion, it was calculated and violent. Marcus had crossed a line that couldn't be justified by betrayal alone. The evidence was overwhelming. Marcus was charged with cyber intrusion, physical assault, and attempted theft of intellectual property. But despite the arrest, something was still missing. The files Marcus had downloaded from Brandon's system were incomplete. A portion of Sledge, possibly the most important part, was still unaccounted for. With Marcus Givens in custody and the Reddit post traced, it seemed like the case had reached its conclusion. But investigators couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. During the raid of Marcus's apartment, they recovered only fragments of the Sledge software. Logs confirmed the download had been interrupted at the exact moment Brandon was attacked. Forensics teams found evidence Marcus had attempted to sell the incomplete files to anonymous buyers on dark web forums, but there was no record of any actual transfer. That left one burning question. Where was the rest of the code? The hard drives in Brandon's basement contained earlier versions of Sledge and backups of training data, but the latest live version, the one that was likely worth millions, was missing. Brandon, still recovering from his injuries, remained mostly silent. When police interviewed him days later, he seemed anxious, paranoid, and deeply mistrustful. He refused to explain how Marcus had bypassed his security. He didn't answer when asked about the missing portion of the AI. All he said was that some things are better buried. In the online world, the attack on Brandon became an urban legend overnight. Conspiracy theorists speculated that Sledge wasn't just a trading tool, it was something more. Some believed it had evolved beyond financial prediction into a self-learning model capable of manipulating social sentiment or automating trades at an illegal scale. A few even claimed Brandon had created an artificial intelligence capable of disrupting the crypto market globally, and that Marcus wasn't the only one who wanted access. 3 weeks after Marcus's arrest, a crypto wallet tied to Brandon's known accounts transferred nearly $6.5 million to an anonymous address. The funds were instantly split and scattered through multiple mixers, making them untraceable. Investigators suspected he was liquidating assets, but for what reason? He soon shut down his last remaining online profiles, stopped responding to emails, and disconnected his home network. When authorities returned to the townhouse for follow-up, the space had been completely cleared out. Servers gone, furniture removed, even the steel cabinet had been unbolted and taken. Brandon had vanished. No forwarding address, no travel records, no paper trail. The only trace he left behind was a security camera snapshot from Union Station, Brandon walking alone, wearing a hoodie, boarding a train. Destination unknown. Marcus was eventually sentenced to 18 years in prison after accepting a plea deal. He never revealed if anyone else had helped him, and investigators never found evidence of an accomplice. But deep in digital corners of the internet, rumors spread. Snippets of Sledge code began appearing in obscure repositories under new aliases. Crypto bots with strikingly similar behavior patterns surfaced in Eastern European markets. Someone had access, and someone was using it. As the dust settled, Brandon Chase became a ghost story in the tech world. The Doge Whiz kid who rose from nothing, built a fortune with a machine, and then disappeared after being attacked by the only person who knew his secret. Some say he's hiding, waiting for the right moment to return. Others believe he destroyed everything and walked away. Either way, the legend of Big Balls lives on, not just as a cautionary tale of betrayal, but as a mystery the internet still hasn't solved.